a sinner, left my lover crying on the dance floor. I'm a sinner, I'm a sinner.
There we go. So let's continue. The question, however, seemed to be way more intricate in its nature. Or at least, that's what Ethan wanted to think, because the Middle Ages were actually about to start pouring out of his ears. He was always diving into his work completely, and living in an age where madness, curse, and death were contagious is an exhausting trial. He needed some distraction. Of course, he had a part-time job with those online courses, but the platform where he lectured wasn't planning anything new just yet. All in all, the request looked interesting, if not for one small matter: the payments, or rather the lack thereof. Ethan hesitated. The sender's name seemed familiar. He searched the email address and found out they had already worked together on a couple of texts. Both times his efforts were duly paid for by the agency. Ethan never worked for free. But it wasn't his principle, but rather the matter of necessity. The problem here was the fact that Ethan loved what he was doing too much. And if you try to make money from what you love, that's a slippery slope. A free service there, an unpaid consultation here, and then you go back to splitting the sheet protectors 8 hours a day, watching your dreams rust away. Besides, Ethan didn't want to let Hope down. Of course, she supported him when he decided to go freelance, but Ethan never wanted to take advantage of that. That wouldn't do. He works only under contract and does not give free consultations. Just as he was about to give that as a response, Bear's head popped up from behind the door. "Are you coming?" On the walk, Hope brought up the cat thing a few more times. Ethan protested absently. His thoughts went back to the letter again and again, to that question. The more he thought about it, the more he wanted to find answers. It was no longer a matter of helping an acquaintance whose name Ethan immediately forgot. No. It was Ethan himself who needed a little help with distraction and an answer. That was a weird thing to do, but Ethan waited until Hope was fast asleep. Only then did he sneak over to his laptop to write a response. Certainly he had no real answer as of yet. He threw in a few dozen polite words, a few general meaning of which was he had taken up the case. Then he clicked send. When Ethan returned to bed, Hope was still breathing slowly and deep. He listened to her breathe for a while, trying not to think that he had broken his own rule. After all, he really needed a distraction. Actually, someone just got home. I'll be right back. No, I'm really not, but let's continue. I'm not okay at all. It didn't... Okay, thank God. Almost deleted the scene. There we go. No matter the strength of your affection, sooner or later you will want to take a break. It was another thing he had learned over the past 4.5 years. If Ethan had to point out when things started to be off, he would say it was on Saturday, that is, about a week after the first letter. But this, of course, wouldn't be accurate. Those weird things started happening almost immediately after he pressed the send button. The first night, he saw a room in his dreams. A chipped white ceiling and similar rough walls lit with fluorescent lights. Ethan couldn't see the lamps themselves, but he recognized the cold shimmering light. They often used those lamps in an office. The light filled the room to the brim. Ethan thought it was about to burst. Then the light would splash all over the room, just like the juice from a squashed tomato. There's no sound. Hold on. Okay. Apart from the walls and light, the room had a red sofa. No. We'll go through this in another game. Then I do have to call it, because I have D&D tonight. The sofa stood just a bit aside from the center. Not too large, quite faded, flooded with shimmering white light. The light made the sofa seem to be trembling a little, and the room trembled with it. Suddenly, Ethan thought it would be way better if the sofa was standing right in the middle. Then he felt something on his temple, a touch. He had to flinch, scream, stumble to the side, yet he couldn't. He was paralyzed. Only his eyes could move, and they desperately tried to reach beyond his field of vision, where something was touching his temple. Ethan felt a faint flow of air as if somebody was whispering in his ear. He did hear the whisper, just one. Ethan no longer remembered what the word was when he jumped up in his bed, gasping for air. Hope muttered something in her sleep and then turned to the other side. It took a long time to get back to sleep, but by morning Ethan did pass out, and when he woke up, the dream wiped out his mind pretty quick. The task at hand interested him much more than some muck spilling out of his subconscious. He was thinking about the task while he was chewing on the morning toast, driving to the bank, and all the way back. It was just like Christmas presents waiting for its time in the closet. The more you tell yourself you shouldn't think about it, the more you do. At home, Ethan tried to stick to his plan, working on the project he was paid for, but ended up sitting over a single report for several hours. He couldn't squeeze out a letter. To hell with it. After all, he was almost done with his current project. It wouldn't be much of a problem if he presented the results a bit later on, would he? Besides, it was really time for him to get a breather. One can't be spending so much time in a world where madness, curse, and death are contagious. To hell with it. No, I'm not. Guys, I will talk about it in the Discord. Please. To hell with it, Ethan thought as he closed the file on his project he was paid for. There was plenty of information, but Ethan knew he would get an answer right away. The accurate answer, just like the precious pearls, lay at great depths. He had to go down to the very bottom. Ethan was not afraid. He had done it many times. His counterpart might have to wait for a week or so, but Ethan knew he'll manage to crack the riddle. What he didn't know is what else could be found at those great depths. And at some point in this investigation, things started happening. He started hearing sparse phrases, even though he never turned on the TV or radio, and Hope wasn't even at home. When he sat in front of the screen once again, trying to connect the dots in his research, he could feel someone looking at the back of his head. When he turned around, of course, there was no one in the room. Eventually, he taught himself not to turn around. He just got angry, pushing fingers into his temples when the familiar feeling appeared again. He started losing things. Or rather, things would disappear and then appear in the strangest places. One day, he found his pencil in the freezer, stuck in a minced meat briquette. Even when the briquette melted down, he couldn't pull the whole pencil out. All Ethan got was a bloody stump. At this point, he could stop and think of it, but got distracted by the coffee maker and endlessly shoved the stump into the trash bin. There was something wrong with the shadows, too. They became sharper, thicker, and deeper. It was the case in the whole apartment. Sometimes they moved. Of course, Ethan only felt like they were moving. It couldn't have been any other way. Ethan didn't really pay attention to any of this, just like he did with that dream he had. All of that seemed very familiar, as he already experienced similar things during the periods of intense work when his nervous system was exhausted by the workload. There always was a rational explanation: the stress, or those new, much more environmentally friendly light bulbs that Hope had installed all around the apartment. Besides, it's so easy to dismiss this sort of thing when you're deeply invested into something, and this question really got Ethan involved. Every time he seemed to get it right, he thought his thoughts went off. Like he was climbing a rock, but a safe ledge suddenly turned slippery, and the next thing he knew, he was at the bottom again. He never faced anything like that during his previous research. There were times he had spent weeks or months looking for the right answers. Those were tricky cases, but at least he could always tell how his research is progressing. This time, he was stumbling in his tracks without knowing why, and that was all he could tell. The week was over, but he still had nothing to send back to his contact. In his reply, Ethan asked a couple of questions. Not that he was really interested, but just as a courtesy. And that's how their surprisingly exciting email conversation started. With this, Ethan's contact grew to be something more, something of a friend, maybe? He never asked how Ethan's work was progressing. This was the question Ethan asked himself, and the answer was never good for him. Of course, he started sleeping badly. Falling asleep was easy, but he woke up many times during the night, sometimes in a cold sweat. Ethan could not remember his dream. That night, he woke up about 3 or 4 times. At first, Ethan was lucky enough to fall asleep almost immediately after he awoke. But at some point, his eyes got open again. This time, the sleep wouldn't come. Ethan felt terribly thirsty. He found no slippers on the usual spot. The noise could wake up Hope, so he decided not to look for them, and only regretted it when he approached the kitchen. The floor was bloody cold, so cold that Ethan unconsciously looked down. And when he looked up again, he saw a shadow. No doubt that shadow belonged to a woman, a naked woman. Ethan could clearly see the points of her nipples as the shadow turned around. No wonder it's freezing cold here. The shadow moved slowly along the wall, floating in a rectangular pool filled with moonlight. She was dancing. She was dancing, and the humming silence in Ethan's ear was her music. Ethan was watching her, unable to move. He was paralyzed, just like back in his dream. But he did not remember it. At that moment, he didn't remember anything at all, couldn't think about anything at all. What is this? He felt an itch in his eye and a momentary urge to blink. For a fraction of a second, he could only see the thick, viscous darkness, and when he opened his eyes again, there was no shadow anymore. The glowing rectangle shifted its place and now lay on the kitchen floor at Ethan's feet. He could see the cold white glow flowing into the seams between the tiles on the floor. For some reason, he took a deep breath and then stepped forward into the rectangle of light. Nothing happened. And what was supposed to happen? What did he really see? Did he really see anything? He walked deeper into the room, much bolder, grabbed the decanter, and started to drink in big, greedy sips. Water streamed down his chin and chest, hitting the tiles on the floor and poured into the grooves of the stream seams. No, that wasn't a delusion. The kitchen was completely empty and the floor felt warm again, and yet it wasn't a delusion. And all of this was begging for a rational explanation. That's why Ethan decided he should talk to Hope in the morning. Did you give anyone the apartment keys, by chance? What? Hope froze with a cup at her lips and blinked several times. Maybe you've let someone in? I didn't. No! What's with those questions? I feel like someone's visiting our place. What do you mean? Exactly what I said. It's been a while since I started noticing random things vanish, and yesterday Hope frowned. She looked at Ethan as if a toad had just popped out of his mouth. Yesterday, you... what? God damn, I did not know how to use that mic. I think we did bluntly last time. Forget it. Come on, maybe you've left the keys unattended somewhere. This couldn't be Ethan, Ralph. Look at this girl. I always leave my keys when I'm in the office, but I'm pretty sure there's no cat burglars among my colleagues. Come to think of it, we should have hired a bunch. That'd balance the risk of going broke we have on a monthly basis. You sure none of your colleagues would play a joke on us? A joke? Good God, Ethan. You look like you're about to eat me alive. Take a bun instead. Tastes better, trust me. Hope pulled her chair closer to Ethan and took his hand. Please, hon, promise me you'll take a break after that project of yours is finished. I mean, one psycho is enough for our family. You promise? I'm just going to be doing a lot of the mature games on Kick, because we can, and it's got a lot less latency. So I can actually, communicate with you guys and it not take like almost a minute. Ethan suddenly felt like a total idiot. A tired idiot. A naked girl in their kitchen? Yeah, sure. He probably overworked to the point he started being delirious at times. Maybe even, excuse me, I had the hiccups. Even walked in his sleep. He squeezed Hope's finger lightly. I promise. Sorry, I'm a moron. I probably stopped seeing the difference between dream and reality. Why don't you call Laura? No, a shrink is the last thing I need right now. My bad, sure, but that'd just be too cruel. What I need is to finish this project. After that, all the gears in my head will fall into place. I give you my word. Oh, don't be like that. I mean, there's no need to start full-fledged therapy anyway. Sometimes, talking through your worries with a professional is all it takes to feel better. At least I shouldn't have pressed you on it. I get that you have enough problems on your own right now. Hopefully they will soon. How's it going in your new position? Hope rested her head on his shoulder and shrugged. Not fired yet, apparently. Seriously though, I haven't figured it out yet. Those new responsibilities are exciting. Oh, but I always feel like I'm 10 times slower than I should be. I should probably get ready for a nice, fat piece of overtime by the end of the month. Ethan kissed her forehead, closed his eyes, and squeezed the bridge of his nose. Well, I'm not ahead of a department as of yet, but I seem to have the same stuff on my plate. Just how do you manage not to pester me with stupid questions? Well, I eat cupcakes at night. You should give it a try. Hope poked Ethan's cheek with a couple of times with her finger. Anyway, don't worry. I didn't give keys to anyone, and the only cat anything I've let inside was an actual stray cat. Now that I think of it, it's been ages since we had any company. Maybe we should. A cat? What cat? Hope sighed and pulled away. Please don't get all worked up, okay? At least I'm being open with you. Don't worry, she didn't wander around. Hope, we've talked about this already. We've talked over what? The fact that what I want doesn't really matter? Damn it, Hope, this is my apartment And you're staying here alone now? Yeah, you did that one to yourself. Hope, finish your tea in a couple of gulps. I have to go to the office. Hope stopped at the door, not turning around. Sorry about the cat. She was really skinny, and I felt sorry for her. Did that one to yourself, dude. I also feel sorry for myself, Ethan, because I'm lonely. Really lonely. This time, Ethan felt like an angry idiot. He got up from the table and reached for Hope. Hope, Don't. I'll start crying. It'll take time. And I don't have any to spare right now. See you tonight. God, yeah, all those lines are being re-recorded. God, I hate them. See you tonight. He didn't know what else to say. He followed Hope into the hall like a silent shadow. He thought the right words would come to him, but the entrance door closed and he remained silent. Ethan sighed. He regretted his decision to talk about the night episode. He regretted how the talk turned out. He felt sorry for himself, and for Hope. After all, Ethan was well aware of that, and he really didn't spare enough time with her. At first, because of the agency project, now because of the question to which he still could not find an answer. It was time to end this. He was going to make some coffee, then he'll open the laptop and write up some answers. It won't be an accurate one, but it's really time to finish that work marathon. After all, he doesn't even get paid for his time. He then nodded to the closed door and turned around, ready to execute the plan. That's when he saw her. Just for a split second, but damn it, he saw her. Black-haired girl flashed in the doorway of one of the rooms. Not even flashed, but drifted. Like a... Ethan's mouth went dry. Shadow. Of course, there was no one in the room. This has gone too far. Ethan had gone too far, but he couldn't turn back, even though he was going to. He didn't even... Hold on. He didn't even make any coffee. He wanted to get rid of the question, get a good night's sleep, and forget about the whole thing. Forget about the shadow that danced in his kitchen. Forget about the pale silhouette that wandered through his apartment. Forget that this very moment someone is looking at the back of his head, and that look makes his skin feel as cold as the kitchen floor last night, and the hairs one by one stand on end. Ethan clenched his teeth, not with anger, but with some new emotion he couldn't name. The blood hummed in his ears louder and louder. It'll all be over after he writes the letter. It'll be over. He opened his laptop. His hands were shaking a little, and was putting his fingers over the keyboard when his cell phone rang. Ethan flinched. He stared blankly for a few seconds as the vibrating rectangle of glass and plastic crawled across the table. Don't answer. Don't do it. Suddenly he grabbed the phone and pushed the accept button. Ethan himself didn't know how that happened. He just did it. That's all. the phone pressed tight against his ear. He waited for a hoarse, gurgling voice that calls his name and tells him to look behind. Or what is supposed to happen in cases like this.
Ethan?
Hope?
Were you expecting someone else, you dolt? Okay, sorry. I'm super uneasy, and so I'm talking nonsense.
Yeah, I'm uneasy too. And that was completely true.
Look, am I distracting you right now?
You are, and I'm very happy about that. Go on, please.
That's great. Look, it didn't come off well at breakfast, right?
Yes. I'm sorry I'm being awful.
No, I'm sorry. Both of us have it hard now, so let's try not to fight, okay?
Great idea.
Why don't we go out tonight? Save for groceries? Counts as going out, if you ask me. I'll go crazy being cooped up like that.
Oh, so that's what's driving me nuts? Should go out for zucchini more often?
So what do you say?
Okay, we're going to buy all the zucchini tonight. Hope laughed. Ethan suddenly realized that blood wasn't buzzing in his ear, no one was looking in the back of his head. And if he turned around, he would only see Hope's socks that she left on the chair again. Hope? Clean your damn socks. I love you.
I love you too, very much. See you tonight.
After finishing the call, he turned around. The socks were resting peacefully on a chair, which meant everything was okay. He went back to the mail and only then noticed several new letters. 2 of them were from his counterpart. Ethan hesitated. He had already decided his course of action concerning the question, so there was no harm in taking a look. He won't feel any guilt. After all, he had already done far more than he should have. Of course, he is a lifesaver for those wanting to sell books mentioning historical accuracy, but having no intention to pay for it properly. And so what? He doesn't have to do a perfect job for free. Hell, he doesn't even work for free. That's what Ethan thought. Then he opened 2 letters he got and changed his highly reasonable decision. His counterpart was asking how soon he would get an answer. This happened, after all. The tone was very polite and apologetic. He wasn't expecting anything, but he really needed the help of someone competent. According to the emails, he wasn't doing very well. The poor man had been suffering from insomnia for an insane amount of time, and it seemed that he too began imagining things. It was as if Ethan saw himself on the outside. Suddenly felt very sorry for his acquaintance. Of course, he had begun to feel sorry for him earlier, but now Ethan felt a sharp, bitter pity. He realized that if he helps his acquaintance, he will help himself, and if he steps back now, what is the value of a specialist who is afraid of a little challenge? As Hope once said, the career ladder is made of thorn. Of course, he no longer worked in an office, but professional growth requires twice as much effort if you're self-employed. And besides, Ethan had Hope. Hope, who never gives in so easily and forgets her socks on the chair. Hope, who loves him very much. Hope, who will go to the store with him tonight because being cooped up like that can drive one crazy. This must be what is happening to his acquaintance right now. Ethan had to help him. Not because of money, of course, but because he could, and because it was the right thing to do. They will both finish their projects, and then they will have a good rest. They might even go out for a glass of beer together. So Ethan thought and got back to the question with newfound strength. The page of the book did not rustle. In the far corner of the room, the shadows weren't wandering in the corridors, and certainly not one looked at the back of his head until the evening. And in the evening, hope came back. And that's where we're going to leave this one. So I'll see you guys next time for this game. Don't forget to check out the Patreon and all that jazz. Lots of links in the description.
Tonight.